Thank you, Martha and Michael's Mission, Dr. Weber, Cindy, and Colon Challenge Foundation. My connection or love affair with colon cancer began in 1984 when I was 3 days fresh into high school as a wonderful freshman. And I remember sitting in the back seat of my parents' car, coming back from a doctor's appointment for my mom. I knew something was wrong because Dad never came to any appointments, me or her. On the way home, my parents were arguing like I wasn't even present. Dad saying, "We need a second opinion." Mom saying, "There's no time for that. I need surgery yesterday." I remember meeting with the doctor in the hallway after the surgery. And he said, quote, "We got everything we could see, but cancer can go in 100 channels that we can't see. And we won't know until the tests come back from the lab." Well, I was a pretty rebellious child, and I wanted to deck that doctor. Because what I wanted to hear in a teenage scared mind was that shit's gone. Then I got to go see my mom for the first time. Tubes everywhere, half conscious. Today I know that was from anesthesia. Nobody talked to me. Nobody explained anything to me. The big C word wasn't spoken about. The only thing I was told was, "Don't cry, because that'll upset mommy, and mommy won't come home right away." That was a forever lasting comment that you'll hear again. So it all began. My mom was fighting for her life for the next 3.5 years. From chemo to hair loss to pain meds to tests to 5 surgeries to what she called a railroad track in her abdomen, in and out of the hospital, more chemo, experimental chemo coming from Washington State. I mean, as an 18-year-old, there was drugs, but I didn't know about that. You name it, it was happening around me. I got my first taste of being a caregiver and a survivor, and I was on my own at a very young age, as an only child, by the way. Thank God for SACA, for very close groups of friends and families who, quote, adopted me, that today I still have in my life, and I'm very fortunate for that. My traditional family was very busy with, and it was very small, but they were very busy with grieving the impending loss of their eventual 39-year-old daughter, who would lose her battle after being a daughter-wife, daughter-in-law, sister-in-law. I was such the survivor and lost that I declined NCAA soccer scholarship recruitments and opportunities, fearing that my mother would die when I was away at college. That's all I could tell the recruiters. Life was awful as a teenager. Folks, we're spending time today here and every year and a lot of efforts on the young folks that are being diagnosed. Just want to drop a seed. The young folks have teenagers. They have children. They too need support and a place that they can go to. Martha and I have already started to have some brainstorm opportunities on that. Fast forward to 1988, 3 days before I graduated high school, Mom dies. There's no coincidences in life. I don't believe that there's coincidences. I believe things happen the way that they're supposed to be. And on this very day, March 19th of 1988, was the day that I buried my mom. The horrible mess of the past 3 years was now a big gaping hole in my heart. What will I do? Well, certainly not the colonoscopy at 18 that the doctors thought I should. That's for sure. I went on to work as an ER tech, had a son, and in 1993 was accepted into nursing school. At this point, I decided to practice what I was going to be preaching soon, taking care of people. And what better than to start off with myself? So onward electively, no symptoms, to my first colonoscopy at 24. A friend said, "Wow, we knew your mom was sick, but really?" Fortunate, the results were negative. And then I was told to return in 10 years, despite my family history, which I neglected to say. My grandfather and my mother's father was diagnosed at age 39 and was alive through this whole process until just a few years ago. The results were negative. I was told to return in 10 years. Perfect, I'm on the road to living a life as I wanted to define, still with a hole in my heart though. I went on to succeed as planned, finished nursing school, raising my son, And then I had the incredible opportunity of meeting my lovely wife, Patricia, who you just heard from as a caregiver. We blended our families, and 20 years later today, we have a small clan of 7 adult children and 15 grandchildren, and life is full. Fast forward again to August of 2002, sitting at my desk in this very building as the clinical quality risk nurse for M&M Health. Doubled over with abdominal pain at age 32. A sudden doom came over me as I knew I was in trouble. This was not the typical that I had been experiencing. I'd been putting off cramping abdominal pain and bowel habit changes for a year, just busy in a blended family that was very active and full. This day I knew I could no longer put it off. I wasn't certain I would get out of the bathroom to even make the phone call to the doctor's office, never mind tell Pat. Here's where I knew that the word survivor would take a different meaning. I called the GI office that same day, recommended by a good friend, hospital administrator in the area on Long Island. Talk about access and availability in 2002. They could see me in October. This was August, don't forget. I begged, pleaded, I even cried. Remember, I hadn't done too much of that since 14, when I was told don't cry because mommy won't come home quickly. I was explaining my family history. I was pleading that I knew I was in trouble. I feared I was gonna die if I didn't get in there before October. I got nowhere, but I didn't give up. I called my friend, the hospital administrator. She paged the doctor immediately. Miraculously, I could see the doctor in 2 days. The initial impression was IBS, but given the family history, let's do a colonoscopy after a CAT scan. CAT scan was done 1 month before colonoscopy, 30 days exactly. CT scans were negative. Thanksgiving Eve, I awoke from a colonoscopy to my GI and that very friend, the hospital administrator, crying. The doctor says, I don't know how to tell you this, you have a huge tumor. I could barely complete the test. Who would you like me to call for surgery? I blurted out a name. I worked at that facility for years. He happened to be in the facility. He came to the GI lab. Fast forward, now I have to tell Pat, she's at work. I told her, don't worry, honey, go to work. It's just routine. They don't think anything's wrong. I'm gonna have irritable bowel syndrome the way my mother had 10 years of colitis with negative barium enemas. That was the only tool from the mid-70s to 80s. Pat and I sat down quickly with our children, all of them, to discuss what was happening. My then 12-year-old was the real focus, as Pat and my relationship was not legally recognized anywhere in the country, never mind New York State, as a family. And I wanted to understand from him, very unlike what was done for me in his shoes, if something should happen, where would you like to go? Who would you like to live with? I wanted to get this put down into legal papers so that if I should not survive this battle, as that's all I knew from the battle was not survival looking at my mom, Pat's battle might be less in the legal system if my family came out of the woodwork or if school said, no, you're not his guardian. We saw the surgeon for the consult. Pat, being the nurse and the amazing caregiver, came with a ream of paper printed of research. And the doctor said, whoa, okay. He sat back and he said, shoot, ask me all the questions you've got. Surgery was done that Friday. Things moved along pretty quickly here. Stage 2, at the time, as Pat mentioned, very fortunate at that time, stage 2, no chemo needed. Not the same story today, although controversy on whether if you have Lynch, you do stage 2, whether you do chemo or not. Life after the diagnosis was not grand. My GI recommended, she was pretty aggressive. I called her my savior. She recommended I see a Dr. Itzkowitz at Mount Sinai. I said, nah, I don't need that. She said, no, you need to have genetic testing. He's got this great thing going. Go check him out. He's got this registry. I was like, I'm just really not so excited about any of this. I did go. He recommended genetic testing, the registry, see a GYN oncologist because hands down, you probably have Lynch syndrome, quote unquote, and you may need to have an elective hysterectomy. So what the hell's wrong with this guy? I don't have no hysterectomy. I'm a nurse, I know about it. I did none of this until my son came home I mean, we do anything as parents for our kids typically, right? He was 14 in his health class, and he learned about genetics. And he comes home and he says, "Mom, I deserve to know what my genetic risks are." I said, "Son, you are too young to have any children." And he said, "Not the point. I should know before I start a family plan." Okay. On to genetic testing. Shocker, Lynch syndrome, first diagnosed in the family, third with cancer. Doctors on Long Island didn't know for nothing about surveillance of Lynch syndrome. They didn't even have a clue. Even my oncologist was at a very large tertiary care center, I'm embarrassed to say. And she used to just call Dr. Lynch every 3 months. Have a conversation with him. "Yep, Dawn's here again today. What's new? What should we do? What do I need to monitor?" During this time, I educated my family on Lynch and every doctor I encountered on what surveillance I needed. The physicians were clearly ignorant to Lynch on Long Island. They were resistant to conduct the surveillance that was, a page long of things every 3 months, every 6 months, every year. It was draining. I mean, even as a nurse, it was just draining. In 2007, I had abnormal cells, colonoscopy. We had to go in for it. Called up my GYN oncologist, who took care of my grandmother years before. Said, "Come on in, get in, 2 for 1, hysterectomy, elective, and colon surgery at the same time." Ironically, abnormal cells were just allergic reaction to anastomotic sutures. Woohoo, now I get to deal with surgical menopause. All this time, I lived in survivor's guilt until about 38, 39, when fear kicked in. Fear like I had never experienced before. The fear of turning 40, which my mother fell short of by less than 30 days. Why have I been afforded continued life? What will 40 look like? Now what? All these questions and rehashing the hole in my heart, until 40 became my new 30 very quickly. Turned 40, we went on a trip of our life. The 10 years that I lost ignoring all the symptoms and living with the post-operative survivor's guilt was over. I began living life that I originally thought I was designing when I went to nursing school. Those of you who have asked when I joined these venues, where have you been all these years? You only came here, you're 10, 11 year survivor. Now understand where I was, living in survivor's guilt and then fear to turn 40. Traveling and photography are now my favorite things to do. I've made it a point to travel wherever and whenever. Even sometimes when I don't know where the next meal's coming from, I don't care. My mother died without leaving the backyard of Long Island at 39. I'm seeing what I need to see before I go. While I've been living the life of my wildest dreams for the past 6 years, now you did the math, I'm 46, I once again was confronted with being a caregiver when my maternal uncle was diagnosed with stage 2C. Funny, there was no C when I was diagnosed, but there is now. He had ignored all along, denying, denial's great. I don't have those genes, I have my mother's genes. So he never went for colonoscopy. So he's 59 years old, he's got an abdomen full of an obstruction, calls me, what the hell do I do? Thank God I was able to point him in the directions he needed to go. Shocker, he's Lynch positive. Within a year of his diagnosis, his 27-year-old daughter was diagnosed with stage 0 and stage 1. She too is Lynch positive. I took her diagnosis hardest out of everything because I really thought that I'd be the youngest to take it for the family. And that wasn't true. In addition to the uncle and cousin survivors, I have one half-uncle and a 16-year-old cousin who are pre-vivors. They've been tested to be positive and are fortunate to have no cancer. Total stats for my family, in case you'd like to track, 7 of us affected by Lynch, 5 confirmed. 2 deceased, 3 survivors, 2 pre-vivors. There's a bunch of youngins coming up. You may be wondering, what's up with my son? Well, he's almost 26, and much to my dismay, he chooses not to have genetic testing yet. I'm getting him closer to the consult door, but in the meantime, he has and does compromise annual colonoscopy since age 20. So we do mother-son spa day, as we call it, with a bunch of propofol. Just saying, the best high I ever had. 14 later. I want to leave you with a few words from my mother, since this whole topic here is about quality of life. 1 month prior to her death, she had an amazing opportunity to participate in a pilot oncology show back in 1988, which aired in LA. Didn't go too far. She was a chosen patient from Stony Brook Hospital. Memorial Sloan was the other hospital chosen in New York. And in turn, she got to choose a nurse to interview her. And in preparation for today, I watched and burned that VHS to DVD, and I found an answer to a question that was particularly awesome, as it's not only how I live my life every day today, again, not ironic, just the way things are. The question was, how should life be? Is what the nurse asked her. She said, living in peace and harmony, people helping others more, being understanding and compassionate, especially with the sick, and to never fear death. We all have to die. Thanks for letting me tell my story.